It's great to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute to talk about Last Night of the World, which sounds kind of ominous, but since we survived a pandemic, maybe it's not so far-fetched, right? Oh man, the world's a weird place. Um, so before we get into the album, before we get into your life and music, I want to know first and foremost, speaking of the pandemic, how did you survive the global pandemic and how much of it has reverberated into your creative process and what you do as a musician now?
I think it forced everyone to take a beat, and we were in a lucky. Me and my partner were in a kind of lucky living situation. So, and I had some teaching that I could do online, so I still had that. It made me kind of have to refocus or rethink what it was I was doing, because in that moment when you're in the thick of it and you can't perform, you're like, well, what am I?
Yeah. Yeah.
um, there's some sort of existential looking inward, but actually it was mainly positive. I mean, apart from not being able to perform, I started animating and like trying to bring things to life visually in that way, and doing like 2D animation and stuff, uh, which is something that I still do. So yeah, I guess it forced me to be creative in another way, and in an immediate way that I couldn't be with music. If
Yeah,
yeah.
I dig it. So Last Night of the World, was that kind of fueled by living through anything in the last 5 years? What was kind of the title and kind of the artistic vision of this project?
Last Night of the World, the song, the title track, had placeholder lyrics for like 2 years,
Yeah.
and everything had been recorded, and I knew that it wasn't about what I was singing about. So I think I'd just seen that movie Don't Look Up, the one about the meteor. It's
Oh
got
yeah. Yeah.
yeah, Meryl Streep is like a kind of female Trump or someone.
Yeah.
um and we know how it ends. And yeah, I think I had that in my head, and then I went back to the song, and that was a line, the kind of um, on the last night of the world, just sit really nicely. And I
Yeah.
thought, okay, well, I'm just gonna kind of brainstorm that out and see if I can write something. On one side, it's really, I guess, it's quite a bleak thing to write about, but also the thing that came back to me when I was watching that movie was, I think they're all sitting around a table having a meal at the end when the meteors. You've seen it, right?
Yeah.
Have you seen
Absolutely.
it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Spoiler alert. Um, they're sitting around sharing this meal, and I thought, yeah, what would you do? Like, if like if there's no point aspiring to have 100,000 TikTok followers, or like making a blockbuster movie or writing a novel, or just like paying your rent. If this is the last night, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
So bleak, but not bleak, and that's where that came from. And then so it's funny, like retrospectively, coming around to calling the album that. But I think I realized there were a couple of tunes on it which were kind of looking outwards, looking up at the vastness of it all, and I quite liked it. It's more playful than bleak. It's like, hey, we're here for a moment,
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
this earth,
Yeah.
um yeah. Does that make
So it's
sense?
in so that kind of hatched a couple of thoughts. Do you remember that story in 2018 when there was a false missile alert that was sent via Hawaii and Jim Carrey got it and his agent called him and said he had 10 minutes to live and he sent out a message to everybody?
I do not remember that.
You should look it up. It's fascinating. And the other thing that's kind of topical with this album title is that you
Yeah.
two, when Octoon Baby came out way back in the early 90s, they were on tour. And when they were in Kansas City, they filmed a video for the song Last Night on Earth in Kansas
Oh,
City. So they went to kind of
yeah.
some dilapidated areas of Kansas City. So, anyways, that kind of amps up the theme of the album a little bit. But so I'm curious, How did this journey into the music begin? Take me back to your childhood. How did this whole journey into not only music, but more specifically jazz, how did it happen?
Um, musically discovering jazz, discovering Wayne Shorter, Joni Mitchell, and it's not jazz, but working with Jaco Pastorius. There's that record Mingus, and that
Yeah.
was kind of a turning point. Hearing that dry cleaner from Des Moines, I was like, "What the hell? What even is this music?"
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and a very enthusiastic, really exciting, vibrant music department when I was at sixth form. So when I was 16, 17, and that kind of changed everything. That turned everything around. It's like, okay, I'll just go and do music. But it wasn't really a conscious thing. It was like I auditioned to get into a conservatoire, and then I was there, and then I realized, okay, I'm here, cool. It
Yeah.
wasn't like I grew up. There's so many people, especially in like, I don't know if it's the same with you, but places like the Academy and Guildhall where people have been practicing since they were, 5 or 6, and they've been looking towards those places. They've aiming towards those places for like a decade, you know. And yeah, it was just a kind of, okay, I'm doing this, cool.
Yeah. Well,
It was
I
really that.
grew up with music, not a lot of music in the household, but I didn't discover jazz until a friend of mine gave me Kinda Blue. And I had my old portable CD player when I was flying to Seattle in my early 20s. And I was like, what spaceship did this fall out of? What is this sound? It was a new thing. So, yeah, I mean, it's like jazz tends to be one of those things where it's either woven into your DNA or it's something you discover late in life and you're like, how did I not know about this before?
Yeah,
There was on the radio, there was Chuck Mangione, there was that kind of, that real popular top 40 kind of a thing happening. But when you really get in to like the inside of the clock face and discover the true soup, that's what I'm talking about. But I'm curious. One of the things that really forms our memories of music and leads us into good directions is seeing it live. What was the first live jazz show you saw that blew you away, or a show that made you think, I want to be on that stage one day?
I remember going to see Wynton Marsalis at the Jazz Cafe when I was 16,
Yeah,
maybe, and it was so, it was so burning. And again, like I hadn't grown up listening to this music. I've grown up listening to like Fleetwood Mac and like interesting music, but not jazz
yeah,
at all. And yeah, it just kind of happenstance, just luck would have it that I had a teacher, a music teacher, who was really into jazz. Ended up at this Winton gig. It was like, oh, this is the world. Okay, cool. I don't even know
yeah,
how I fit in here, but like, you know,
yeah.
yeah.
So I've never seen him. I would love to see him. His brother Delfeo, the trombonist, came to town, and he came here because there's a really world renowned guy here that restores horns, and he restores trombones. So he took care of his trombone and put like, it was kind of cool. It was like he put a little piece of stained glass like art inside of one of the ventricles. Yeah. So he just played a show, and it was really, I mean, you can feel the lineage of the Marsalis dynasty in all of them. There's just that infectious New Orleans groove. There's that bustle of New York. There's that history that won't go away, but they're kind of pushing their own little like extra spice on top of the meal. So
Yeah.
it's good. So let me ask you this. What do you like the best about being a professional musician? What gets you up every day? What motivates you? What has made you evolve into your craft?
Oh, that is such a good question. Like, you can do whatever you want.
Right.
You can do whatever you want. There are no rules. Being self-employed, being on your own terms. You're not going into an office. You can literally curate your own life. I mean, and that changes slightly when you have a child.
Right.
Um, and maybe I think, oh, I could have curated my time a little. I could have done more things, but I think that's the exciting thing about it. And I would struggle not to, you know, try and sell that to I don't know if I'd want my, well, hopefully my daughter will grow up seeing what a kind of vibrant, varied life it is, because you just do different things week to week, and that all feeds into your voice, right? The things that you want to talk about. So I love the lifestyle. I love working. I also love the teaching I do, like working with young musicians who are passionate and are so brilliant, that it's terrifying, but it's just inspiring. Like I feel like I get it's not a one way thing. Teaching in higher education, so teaching's 18 upwards. They they bring so much that I feel like we're both learning stuff, and yeah, that's a beautiful part of the portfolio career, and really important to me. I love it.
Well, one of the
I,
things,
I yeah,
sorry, there
sorry.
was a delay. So one of the things that being a teacher, you've had this fortunate position to have been alive longer, which means you've played with more people and on more stages. What do you ultimately want to teach your students? What do you want them to understand about this jazz community?
I think in conservatoire there's a lot of emphasis on virtuosity, of being at the absolute top of your game, which as a model coming from classical music kind of makes more sense, because you're you're like playing music that already exists. um and it's such a different process, isn't it, sort of classical to jazz. But in jazz and contemporary music, it obviously, and songwriting, or whatever area of non-classical music you're working in, it's you don't have to be a virtuoso. You don't have to be an incredible guitarist to write beautiful songs on the guitar, or even like a horn player. I'd rather hear someone, they have their limitations, but they speak from the heart, like than someone who's got every diminished pattern under their fingers, but it's lacking soul. And I don't think that. But I think it's when you're in the conservatoire environment, I don't think you necessarily believe that, because we want tangible goals. And a tangible goal is like, I need to be able to shred over this at 200 whatever, and I need to play all these licks and like show that I know all the stuff. Because it's much harder for us to say, we're going to assess you today on telling us something that you believe in on your instrument. Like, how would you assess that?
Yeah,
You can't.
right.
um, so that I do try to show that, or you just have those conversations with students. I think they're more aware than when I was a music student. I think they're more outward looking. I think I was put off doing things because I thought I wouldn't be good enough, you know,
Yeah,
which is a shame,
yeah,
because artists, it's not like you only go one way. You don't just have one like instrument or one way of like expressing yourself creatively. That can be that you can have multiple outlets,
sure.
even if they're not all like Turner Prize award winning, or
Yeah.
whatever.
So the one thing about being a musician is there's all these dreams that you have going in. And I'm curious, what was the stage that you dreamed of playing on and you finally did and you thought, wow, I've arrived somewhat. This is great. I'm here.
Oh, I don't. I think like as soon as you do a gig and I remember like working for a catering company when I was a student, and I'd work 20 hours on a gig, and you'd be paid like peanuts, and seeing people playing on the stage at the same event, and they would be paid properly. And I think the first time I did a gig and I was paid, I was like, okay. I feel like that's a milestone,
Yeah.
because it's such a privilege to be able to do something that you love and be paid for it. You know, you might be compromising in some way, like maybe you can't do the exact thing you want to do, but you're playing music. You're getting to sing for money. That's pretty cool. You know,
So let's say you could get into a time machine, go back in time and see one jazz show. Where are you going?
Shadows and Light, the live Joni record with Wayne Pat Metheny. I think he's on it. Is Pat Metheny on it? Jacko's on it. Don Elias,
Yeah,
right? You know
yeah.
that, live record. Wayne, yeah.
Wow, you
That
knew that
music.
one. You were ready
Sorry.
for that question. You were ready for that question.
Oh, I got that. I remember ordering the VHS, like the tape at sixth form, and it coming from America, and it took like 6 weeks to come.
Oh, that's such a cool story. That's great. So let me ask you this. You kind of already said this, but I want to ask it pointedly. Why do you love this art form that we call jazz?
Because it can mean whatever you want it to mean.
Yeah,
Um, and we're in this kind of post genre, or there's it's amalgamation of so many things. Like that is jazz, isn't it? It's not about like a set sound that stays the same. It's constantly evolving. So that's, that feels significant. And I love the feeling like you just do the thing that you do, and people will go, oh yeah, they've listened to these things, but you sound like you, but maybe she went to jazz school. I don't know.
right.
I
Yeah,
don't know what it's
yeah.
like.
So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, fans, students, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
That's another. I love these questions. Um, just making stuff. I want to make stuff. I want to say things that mean something to me, and share that, and maybe that resonates with one person. Like you do a show and one person comes up at the end and they say this reminds me of this, or I wish I'd had that conversation, and they come forward because it resonates. So that, yeah, I think just saying something and it meaning something to one person, to be in that position to be able to do that, that's very cool. I'm also a mother,
Yeah,
and I love making that, like introducing that side of me to the side of me that already existed. There's a bit of a realignment that needs to happen.
yeah.
She's 2.5, so it's quite new. But that's, yeah, there's two me's now.
Sure.
I'm
Yeah,
trying to,
absolutely. The proverbial
yeah,
zygote has been split, so to speak, you know? S-
well, yeah.
So let me ask you this. I'm going to do a meta question here with your album. So if it is indeed the last night on Earth, the last night of the world, and you need to convince people to get your album, Last Night of the World, as the last album they buy, what would you tell them to convince them to buy it?
Hey, wouldn't it be ironic to buy a record that's called Last Night of the World, and it literally is
Look at
Last Night
that!
of the World?
Look at that! You're you need to be on a game show. That's on your feet. I love it. That's great. So, speaking of, if anyone wants to pick up a copy, they want to catch you live, any of the good business in your world, where do they go?
They go to my website, finibearman.com. My album's on Bandcamp, like all of my albums. You can obviously stream, but you can buy it and own something if you go to Bandcamp. Or, yeah, just find me on my website.
Okay.
I don't think there's any other Fini Bearmans, so for now.
Okay. Cool. Finny, this has been great. Thank you so much. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your time. Best of luck with the release and everything else. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
You
Jazz
bet.
fans, Joe Domino here, the host of the weekly Neon Jazz radio show and regular interview series being produced and distributed from Lee Summit, Missouri. We are very excited to let you know about the second annual Lee Summit Jazz Festival taking place again this summer on June 28th at the Bridge Space, located at 210 Southwest Market Street in downtown Lee Summit. Following the success of the 2024 festival, the lineup will include Lee Summit students, Casey Area Youth Jazz, Paganova with Michael Pagan, Horoscope with Stan Kessler, Brad Gregory, Adam Larson, and the Lee Summit Jazz Orchestra. There will also be food trucks and vendors to round out a day of celebration. Early bird tickets are 2 for $30, and all details can be found at lsjazzfest.com. We can't wait to see you there.